Hello and welcome back to Budget Wow, where today we'll be taking an in-depth look at the Nighthaunt and all the available purchases for the army. So in this tier list, we're going to go over every Nighthaunt purchase currently available and some not so currently available. I say almost because we're not going to go over the old paint starter sets like the old Tempest of Souls that came with the paints. Wouldn't really recommend this, especially the older these sets get. There's no guarantee that the paint is going to be usable anymore. Also, we're not going to be going over any of the magazines that came with Nighthaunt models. We will be going over all of the box sets as well as the accessories, as well as all the heroes and units available for the army. I'm going to be ranking everything based on three categories. First and foremost is value. Given that this is a value hammer channel, we're going to be talking a lot about what do you get for your money. Is this a good purchase if you're starting out with the army or expanding an existing army? We'll talk about aesthetics. How does the model look? How is it to paint? I think this is a fantastic looking army, and some of the best sculpts GW has put out all around. And we'll talk about gameplay. Now we will look at a little bit of a competitive perspective, although I am a destruction player, so I'm doing my best with this big brain death army. And we'll also talk about just how fun or playable or useful each model is from a more beginner friendly perspective as well. Now value is going to break ties and overall hold more weight as these RGW products, they're expensive, and that's where I put a lot of weight in my tier lists, and especially for box sets where you're looking for savings by bundling things together. To start, we'll look at all the box sets as well as the battle tome and accessory purchases for the army. And speaking of the battle tome, here it is. I like to start the tier lists off with the battle tome as it is a core purchase for the army. However, I do value it at a C given how expensive these are. $55 is a big ask for these battle tomes and does feel a little bit like a tax on the rules for each army. You can find them at a discount for about $45 US. As far as aesthetics, I give it an A minus. I am holding it back from an A just because they recycled the Nighthaunt art from the last edition's Battle Tome. And if anything, they made the cover look worse by putting that red splash up at the top. However, there's lots of good art on the inside, and gameplay-wise, I give it an A. This is leaps and boundsy, better rule set for the army than we had in second edition. It makes the army feel a lot more balanced, a lot more powerful than it used to be. For all those reasons, I put the Battle Tome here in the B tier. Okay, next is the Nighthaunt War Scroll cards. I value these at a D minus. I generally value the War Scroll cards pretty low and don't really recommend them as a purchase unless you really want them for the convenience of having the rules just right in front of you as you play. But for most people, I would suggest just buying the Battle Tome and using the War Scrolls from there, and then using the app to help out during gameplay. If you really wanted to have the War Scrolls in front of you while you're playing, you could always photocopy your Battle Tome and then cut them out or even laminate them. I think that this is just a high asking price for what it is, essentially a bunch of cardstock laminated cards for 34 bucks. Aesthetic wise, I give them a B. Same great art that you usually see with Games Workshop products. And for gameplay, I do give them an A. I mean, it is nice having the cards in front of you. My biggest problem with these is that they will become obsolete, and then it's $33.50 that you paid for things that are no longer up to date as the War Scrolls get updated or changed, or when the next Battle Tome rolls around. So War Scroll cards are going into the D tier. Next up is the dice. So you get 20 Nighthaunt dice for about 40 US dollars. I value this at an F. This is pretty outrageously high price for dice. They are nice, but to put it into some perspective, you can get 12 Chessex dice of a similar size for 10 bucks, or 24, which is more than this, for 20 bucks. Or if you get the smaller Chessex dice, you can get 36 of them for $13. And these are nice dice. Chessex is one of my favorite dice brands out there. Alternatively, if you really want to save money, you can get 10 bicycle dice for $2, or you can get 100 for about 10 on Amazon. And if you really want, you can like go out and support one of your favorite creators, like the Cinderfall Gaming dice, or 20 dice for $20. And even with shipping from Australia, it still comes out to be cheaper than this. So I would really not recommend buying these unless you just have to have them. Aesthetics, I give them a B. The Nighthaunt logo is cool on there, and they're a nice color. It's a little bit hard to see the white on the light teal background, although I haven't seen them in person, to be fair. Now, compared to the old Nighthaunt dice, they are leaps and bounds better. The old dice had a skull representing the 1 and then an hourglass representing the 6, or it might have been the other way around. I hate it when they put logos on two sides of the dice. It's just really confusing and slows down the game. Gameplay wise, I give them a C. They're dice. There's not much more to say than that. So the new dice I'm going to put in the D tier, and perhaps I'm only going to spare them from the F tier because I've decided to put the old dice down there. Next up is Vanguard Nighthaunt, which is currently the only box set readily available for the army. It's a good Vanguard set. Nighthaunt did not have a start collecting set, unlike many of the armies that are getting their start collecting replaced with a Vanguard, because they were the starter army for 2nd edition, so they were in all the starter boxes, which were quite good value at the time, but are no longer readily available. So Vanguard Nighthaunt is actually what I would recommend for most people getting into the army. Pretty standard savings. It's about a 35% savings, or $71 off if you were to buy the products individually. It runs $130 at MSRP, but you can find it pretty easily at $110 for a discount, which is steep. That's why I put a star by the S here. I am ranking it at S tier for value relative to what's available for the army right now. This is just about the best savings that you're going to find. And aesthetics wise, I give it an A. They're great looking models together. You'll have a nice little Vanguard style force available. And gameplay, I give it an A. You're getting 2 units of Chain Rasp, which are Battle Line, and a unit of Grimghast Reapers, which is Battle Line, and a unit of Spirit Host, which is Battle Line. So 4 Battle Line units, and a Knight of Shrouds, which is a handy hero to have. Not sure you would necessarily want to run 2 of them, but you could. So buying multiples of this is totally reasonable. For all those reasons, I am going to put Vanguard into the S tier for this list. It's not the best savings you can get on any army, but it's currently the best we got for Nighthaunt. In a similar vein is the recently released Arena of Shades battle box. Now, as a battle box, it pits a small army of Nighthaunt against a small army of Daughters of Cain, all for around $200. It retailed at $195 US. You can still find these discounted for about $165 at a lot of retailers. Now, what do you get in the box in terms of Nighthaunt? You get 760 points of Nighthaunt. You get a unit of Blade Geist Revenants, you get a unit of the Craven Throne Guard, Mirmorn Banshees, and then you get 2 heroes, which is pretty cool. Oftentimes you only get 1 in these boxes, but you get both the new scripter Mortis, as well as Crawlock with a unit of 2 Chain Ghasts. So quite a few units actually in the box. And if you were to buy all the Nighthaunt stuff individually, it would run you $191 just about. So you're actually paying, if you bought the box at full price, you'd be paying about, just for the Nighthaunt, half of the army and getting the Daughters of Cain for free. Or if you get it at a discount, you're actually getting a little bit of a discount on the Nighthaunt stuff alone. Now, I do rank this as an S because ideally you find somebody that you can either split this with, and then you're only paying half the price for your Nighthaunt stuff, which is a pretty great discount if you can work that, or if you can sell the Daughters of Cain half. I did look on eBay, and it is very hard to find the whole Nighthaunt half available. Most people are either splitting up the pieces because the Nighthaunt half is more sought after than the Daughters of Cain half currently. Aesthetics, I give this an S. I think these are some of the best looking units out there. The Scriptor Mortis is a fantastic new sculpt, as are the Craven Throne Guard. Gameplay, though, I only give it a B plus for those same units, really. The Scriptor Mortis and the Craven Throne Guard are awesome sculpts, not very strong currently in the game. But you do get the Blade Geist Revenants, which are a fantastic battle line unit. The Banshees are solid, and the Spirit Torment and Chain Gas are another solid pickup for the army. So I kind of surprised myself with this one, but I also put Arena of Shades at the time of this recording in the S tier. Now, eventually the price is going to go up and it won't be as good as the value, but for now, S tier. Okay, so next is Soul Wars, which is, of course, out of print and kind of fallen from grace in the value since that time. It retailed for 160 with the launch of second edition Age of Sigmar and was a pretty good deal back in the day. You used to be able to find it just before third edition rolled around at a pretty steep discount on Amazon or other online retailers for like 95 bucks in some instances, but those days are over. Now the cheapest I could find was on eBay at $270 for the time of this recording, and I've seen them going for more. As far as what you get in the box, you get a Knight of Shrouds on Steed, which is a good hero, a Lord Executioner, a not so good hero, Guardian of Souls, a great hero, and this is one of the only places you could get it. So that one's hard to find and might be a reason to pick this up if you find it at a good price. And then a Spirit Torment, but no Chain Gas to accompany it. The biggest problem with this box is that they gave you really funky numbers of units. You only got 4 Reapers, which you have to run in a unit of 10, so it's kind of worthless, to be honest. This was one of the big criticisms of this box. You also got 5 Glaive Wraith Stalkers for some reason when they could only be running units of 4. You did get 20 Chain Raspboard though, which was the appropriate size. So for that reason, I give it a C for gameplay, even though there's some really strong heroes in the box. The funky unit sizes take away from it for me. Aesthetics, I do give it an A. I think the heroes look great, and the Nighthaunt units as a whole look great. Overall, though, while back in the day it would have been an S or A easily, nowadays I put it in the C at a low C. Okay, next is Tempest of Souls, which is the mid-range starter set for second edition. As an aside, I've got a lot of love for this set. It was the first Age of Sigmar set that I bought and got into painting Games Workshop miniatures. And I still have my Sequitors, which I use in my Stormcast army. But anyway, as for the value for Nighthaunt now, the set originally retailed at $80 MSRP. And now you can find it for roughly $80 to $88, but it is a little more difficult to find, and I would expect that to continue to rise in price, which is why currently I only give it a value of a C. Let's talk about as far as what you get in the box. I give it an A for aesthetic. You get the special sculpt of the Lord Executioner with the Gallows, which is one of my favorite Nighthaunt sculpts. And you also get 4 Reapers, again, not a full unit and kind of difficult to fill out into a full unit. 4 Stalkers, which is a full unit, but you don't get the Drummer, which is unfortunate, but I think most people would let you just run it as if there was a Drummer. And then 10 Chain Raspboard, which is, solid standard battle line. The total MSRP, if you were to buy these units individual for the Nighthaunt, is about $94, but you can't really count the Reapers very well with that. So there is a little bit of savings to be had here if you can find it, which is a big if. Gameplay-wise, I give it a D because you have the less than half of a unit of Reapers, and you get kind of the worst of the 4 heroes for the tabletop and the Lord Executioner on the Nighthaunt side. However, it is excellent for Warcry, and I still use the Nighthaunt I have in this set for my Nighthaunt Warcry Warband. For all that, I do value it in the C tier, a little under Soul Wars. Next is Stormstrike. So in the Stormstrike box, this was the entry-level starter set in second edition. And what you get is the easy-to-build Glaive Wraith Stalkers and the easy-to-build Mourn Banshees, which you can still get both of those sets for pretty cheap. So they're $33 for the 2 of them, whereas this set retails for $40. You do get the Stormcast, of course, but now it ranges from around $40 to $65, depending on if you're able to find it. So what I would say is that if you want either of these units, which you'd probably want the Banshees more than the Stalkers, just buy the unit. They're cheap. You're actually kind of losing money unless you really want the Stormcast in this box. And this box again suffers from the fact that on the Stormcast side, one of the units, the Sequitors, does not come with a full unit. So unless you really want that special sculpt on the Stormcast side, it's probably not worth it to buy this box. That's why I give it a D- for value. Aesthetic, I give it A. These are better versions of the Glaive Wraith Stalkers, which are a great sculpt. And for gameplay, I give it a C, mostly because of those Banshees are handy to have. So overall, I put Stormstrike in the D tier. Okay, next let's talk a little bit about the Battle Force Court of the Craven King. This came out in 2019. It was the big Battle Force Christmas set for the Nighthaunt, and it's pretty good stuff in here if you're able to find it. I give it a frowny face for value because I could not find one anywhere online. Now that's not to say you won't be able to find it at your friendly local game store, and if you do, this could be a really good pickup. But from, the only thing I was able to find on eBay is that maybe somebody's selling it for like 275, 300 US dollars. But very difficult to find a complete set of this. It was a pretty limited run. As for what you get in the box, I give it an A plus for aesthetics and a B plus for gameplay. You get Kurtas Valencian, of course, who's kind of the theme of this set. And then you get a good kind of base of each of your main battle lines, so you can kind of try different things out. You get a unit of Chain Rasp, a unit of Grimghast Reapers, a unit of Hex Wraiths, a unit of Dreadscythe Harridans, and a unit of Blade Geist Revenants, which is essentially all of the battle line and battle line if options for the Nighthaunt, which is nice. However, since this one, even more so than Soul Wars, is more or less impossible to find right now, I had to disqualify it. So I'm not going to include it in the tier list because if you can find it for a reasonable price, it might be like A or S tier. But if you are paying $400 for it, there's just no easy way to rank it. Okay, next I want to talk about the Nighthaunt Warcry box. This is a good set for Warcry, not as good of a set for the full-scale game. And that's because you get half a unit of Grimghast Reapers. Now you do get 5 here instead of 4, so if you could get 2 of these boxes, it might be worthwhile. However, it suffers from the same problem of the Stormstrike box in that it's including those easy-to-build Glaive Wraith Stalkers, which are just not very good right now, and the Mourn Banshees, which are good, but they're both cheap. So there's not much savings in the box. If you add it all up, I value it with the half Grimghast unit at about $58. This retails for $50. It's actually out of print and pretty hard to find right now. The cheapest I could find it was for $56. So you're not really saving anything. So not much sense in buying this unless you're getting it for Warcry and just like the units. So I give it a D for value. A for aesthetics, they're great sculpts. C minus for gameplay. And for all those reasons, I do put the Warcry box down in the D tier. Okay, there's this little bundle of heroes that came in the Soul Wars box that GW released because you can't buy Soul Wars anymore. This is the only place to get the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed and the Guardian of Souls, which is the wizard model on the upper right there. For value-wise, you can pretty much only get this directly from GW for $80 unless you find somebody selling the heroes on eBay. I give it a value of a B minus. It's actually not bad value, which I'm kind of surprised to see myself saying. Most of the times when they release these hero bundles from like the launch box, for example, the Stormcast and Cruel Boys ones with Dominion, it's a pretty terrible value. They tend to really gouge, but 80 is pretty reasonable for 3 heroes within the confines of GW's very high prices, of course. If you value the Knight of Shrouds at about 40, which is about what he goes for on eBay, and the Guardian of Souls at about 40, and the Spirit Torment, I value at about $35 since you're not getting the 2 accompanying chain ghasts. You're saving about $35, $40 on this, which is about a 33% savings, which isn't bad. Aesthetic-wise, I gave it an S. I think these heroes all look great, especially the Guardian of Souls. And gameplay wise, I give it an A, mostly because it's got the Guardian of Souls, which is, in my opinion, one of the most powerful and useful support heroes that Nighthaunt has. For all those reasons, I put this in the A tier. It's something you may want to look into, especially if you need to get yourself that Guardian of Souls. Okay, this is the old Start Collecting that went along with Nighthaunt. It's actually from back when the faction was called Malignants, kind of in first edition, coming over from Fantasy Battle. Start Collecting Malignants, it's not something I would really recommend buying in this day. It's out of print. It used to retail for 85 bucks, which was decent. Now the best I can find it, best I can tell, it goes from about $100 to $165 on eBay. For that, I give it a D minus. These are all very old sculpts in the box, and on top of that, one of the units you're getting isn't even a Nighthaunt unit. The Mortis engine is actually a Soulblight Gravelords unit. You could ally it in, but I don't really see any reason why you would want to do that unless you got this box really cheap and are just starting your army and looking to fill out points. You get Hex Wraiths and a Spirit Host would be the main reason you'd be looking at this, which are both battle line options, both older sculpts. I give it a D for aesthetics overall, mainly because of those older sculpts. Gameplay wise, I give it a C just because you get a couple battle line units, but again, the Mortis engine probably not going to be useful. And for all those reasons, I put Start Collecting Malignants in the D tier. Okay, so the endless spells, surprisingly hard to find right now. I expect GW will re-release this, one would hope, at some point. Retails for $40. Right now it's going for about $55 secondhand. I give it a D for value, mostly just because I do play orcs, so I don't use endless spells a lot, but I don't really value them super highly. There are some that, of course, are very powerful, but these ones, you could probably skip them, especially if you're just getting into the game. They mostly do some mortal wounds. One of them has a little explode effect. One of them can heal. Aesthetics-wise, I give these an F. I think the box of cartoon skulls and the hourglass in particular are really ugly. The scythe is a little better looking, but endless spells in general are not my favorite models to paint or look at. Gameplay wise, I give them a B. They've got some utility, especially for filling out lists. You can always throw in endless spells. It might be worth picking up if you want them. I do put them in the D tier, however. Okay, that does it for all the box sets, accessories, etc. Let's move into the units and heroes. First up is the new sculpts featured in the Arena of Shades box, the Craven Throne Guard. These are $45, which is fairly standard high GW pricing. If you find them discounted, you can expect to find them at around $38. I do give them a value of C for that, for what you're getting. Aesthetic wise, I give them an S+. I think they're my favorite troops options in terms of looks. I think they look fantastic. I'm a sucker for crossbows. I'm a sucker for banners. They've got all that going on. They look great, but on the table, they're not, at least not in the current new battle tome. They have a 12-inch force to hit, force to wound, Ren -1/1 missile attack, and a pretty lousy melee attack. And their gimmick is they can shoot through walls and they can shoot units they can't see. So I think the idea is you can like deep strike them in somewhere and then have them shoot, but it's a pretty piddly shooting profile, which I think is what GW is trying to lower the power of shooting, but these guys just aren't very strong. They are battle line if you have Kurtas Valencian in your army, so something to consider. I do put them in the C tier overall, mostly because I would love to have them if I was playing this army, but they're not very strong right now. Next is the Blade Geist Revenants. These are a battle line in the Scarlet Doom subfaction, and I value them at a C. They're $50 for a box of 10. You can get them discounted at $42. A plus on the aesthetics. I think they're one of the best looking troops you can get. And for gameplay, I give them an S. I give them an S because in the Scarlet Doom subfaction, they pick up mortal wounds on their charge.
and because Nighthaunt can innately retreat and charge, you can expect to be charging these guys possibly in multiple small units multiple times, stack some support heroes behind them. This is what Nighthaunt loves to see, is kind of a stacking buffs army with a lot of kind of annoying tactics. And they're pretty cool. You can really build a whole army around these guys, and their attack profile is not too shabby. 2 attacks each, threes, -1 rend, 1 damage, and you get extra attacks when you charge, which we'll be doing a lot of. So you can really start to add up the wounds on these guys. For all that, I put them in the B tier. This is your bread and butter, like standard Nighthaunt unit is your Chain Raspboard. They're $42 for a box of 10. Right now you can get them discounted for 30 to 35 bucks. Unfortunately, long gone are the days where you could find these all over eBay, kind of similar to Hobgrot Slitas these days for like 11 bucks for 10. But for that reason, I give them a value of a D. Just because there's more efficient ways to buy them, especially if you're picking up Vanguard or if you can find a better deal on eBay. But right now, just buying a box of these isn't the greatest deal. Give them an A for aesthetics. I think they look great. And for gameplay, I give them an A too. They're a solid battle line unit, and they kind of would be useful in an army where you're trying to just pour out buckets of wounds on your opponent. You can run up to 30 of these in a unit, and they have 2 attacks each at 4s, no rend, 1 damage, which, like pretty mediocre profile. But with Nighthaunt, when you roll a 6, it automatically wounds, and then you skip to your opponent's saving. So you're really just looking for weighted dice with these guys, and they do get +1 to wound on the charge, which, as I mentioned with the Revenants, they'll be doing a lot of. So don't underestimate these little guys. I put them in the C tier. Okay, Mirrorworm Banshees are an interesting one. They're really quite cheap for Games Workshop standards, which is why I value them at an A+. You can get them $16.50 at retail, or you can find them for about $15 for a unit of 4. Now, why are they so cheap? They're an easy to build, quote unquote, unit, meaning they're push fit. In 2nd edition, Games Workshop put out a couple of these easy to build sets for the 2 starter factions, Stormcast and Nighthaunt, which were geared towards beginners. They pitch them as kind of the first thing to buy when you're setting up your army. And they're still cheap, at least for now. And aesthetic-wise, I give them an A. These are fantastic looking models, and they're no slouch on the table either. They have a pretty decent little weapons profile for a small unit like this. They have 2 attacks each at 4s to hit, 3s to wound, rend -2, 2 damage a pop. But then they also have this neat ability, Spell Eaters. It lets you roll 2d6 whenever a wizard successfully casts a spell on a unit within 12, wholly within 12 of these models. And you get a roll 2d6, and if you beat the casting value for the spell, not what the enemy wizard rolled, then the spell is dispelled. So it's a pretty good little anti-magic utility on top of the nice kind of multiple small unit potential of the Banshees. So because of their value mixed with being a solid unit, I put Banshees in the A tier. Now, the Glaive Wraith Stalkers are the other model that you can buy for 16 bucks. So value, I give them an A. And aesthetic, I give them an A+. I think they look even better, especially this set with the drummer. They're fantastic looking models. But as far as gameplay, they're pretty bad. I give them an F. At least for their current iteration of the War Scroll. They somehow got worse from 2nd edition. They were bad in 2nd edition, and they've mostly gotten nerfed. They now do 1 attack each. They used to do 2 attacks each. They have a 1-inch range despite having spears. They used to have 2-inch range. And they're hitting on 4s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend, 2 damage each. You know, not very compelling. Overall, I put the Glaive Wraith Stalkers in the D tier. Okay, let's talk about the Spirit Hosts. Value-wise, I give them a B-. They are pretty standard, high Games Workshop pricing. A box of 3 of these is going to run you 32 bucks. You can find them discounted for a little bit cheaper. A little cheaper than some of your other battle line options, but you're only getting 3 models and they're older sculpts, which brings me to the aesthetics. I give them a D. Now, I just don't think they live up to the high standards set by the rest of the army, which as a whole, the Nighthaunt look fantastic. They're some of my favorite ghosts that you can find in any game out there. Um, if you look at these in a vacuum, they actually look pretty good. They're like cool ghost models for tabletop games. And if you were to show this to me before I knew about Warhammer or Nighthaunt and said, hey, look at these ghost models for X game. Look at them compared to this Dungeons and Dragons ghost. Well, yeah, they look amazing. Or look at them compared to this Casper Funko Pop. Yeah, they would be in like the A or the S tier. But when you compare them to how great the Nighthaunt look, they don't quite match the vibe. I mean, they do look better than the old fantasy battle spirit hosts that were in resin, although much respect to those ones. But gameplay wise, I give them a B. They do 6 attacks each, and they have bodyguard functionality, which is new in this battle tome. It makes them quite useful. On a 3-up, you can have them soak wounds or mortal wounds from a hero unit that they're guarding, which is quite good. I'd say overall, an average purchase, put them in the C tier. Next is the Hex Wraiths. I value them at a D. They're $42 for a box, which seems high given these are an older sculpt. They've been around since Fantasy Battle. They are plastic, but they're currently hard to find. You can't really get them at a discount, at least from what I've been able to see. They're running for about $50 secondhand, which seems, again, high for 5 models of an older unit. Aesthetics-wise, I give them a C minus. I think they hold up pretty well. They are plastic, like I mentioned, but they're just not the same level of excitement aesthetics wise as the rest of the army. And for gameplay, I give them a C. They're okay. They're 160 points. They're 3s and 3s, -1 rend, 1 damage. They do some mortals on a charge. They would not be one of my first purchases as a battle line unit for Nighthaunt, and I put the Hex Wraiths in the D tier. Okay, Grimghast Reapers, another battle line unit for the army. They go for $50 retail, $42 at a discount. Give them a D for value, mostly because you can get them more efficiently by buying them through the Vanguard box, getting them at that 35% discount. Otherwise, it's very standard, quite high Games Workshop pricing for a box of these guys. Aesthetics, I give them an A+. I think they're one of the best looking Grim Reaper style models you can find out there. In terms of gameplay, I give them a B+. Their battle line, they are like anti-chaff, anti-horde. They get extra attacks when they attack a unit with 5 or more models. Fairly standard profile for Nighthaunt. They do 4s to hit, 3s to wound, rend -1, 1 damage. They do have 2-inch range, which is nice for 3rd edition. I put the Grimghast Reapers down in the C tier with their Chain Rasp cousins. Dreadscythe Harridans are another conditional battle line that are battle line in the Quicksilver Dead subfaction, and I think are quite an exciting unit for the army. I value them at a C. They run for $50, 45-ish at a discount, which again, standard high GW pricing. Aesthetics-wise, I give them an A. I think that they're unique. I like that they're different than a lot of the different Nighthaunt units, which a lot of them look like variations on the Chain Raspboard, if we're being honest. Good, but these are kind of unique looking, which I appreciate. What gets me really excited is the gameplay potential. They get 4 attacks each, so a unit of 10 is going to be pumping out 40 attacks. And their profile at first glance doesn't look too exciting. It's 4s to hit, 4s to wound, no rend, damage 1. But you add 1 to hit and wound rolls if they're within 6 inches of an enemy with wounds or have had anybody die that turn. So suddenly they're looking a lot scarier, and in Quicksilver Dead, they ignore ward saves, which could potentially be quite strong depending on what you're going up against, especially something like the Chaos armies or Death armies that have a lot of wards. Could be good in the mirror match against fellow Nighthaunt. So I think these guys have a lot of potential to be quite strong. And I respect the Dreadscythe Harridans. I put them in the B tier.
The Black Coach got quite a bit of a buff with this new Battle Tome, which we'll talk about in a second. As far as value, I do give it like a D plus. It's 335 points, but it costs 130 bucks or 110 at a discount. So not a great points to price ratio, but what a great looking model. I would rank this the best looking model, or at least up there for the Nighthaunt. It's fantastic, a great centerpiece for your army. You know, if I played Nighthaunt, I would really want to have one of these someday. Um, Gameplay wise, I give it an A minus. It saw quite the uptick in strength compared to last edition when it was pretty worthless. It's got a decent little missile attack. And then when you look at the melee attacks, it has 22 different melee attacks, and it doesn't get worse with losing wounds. There's no brackets for this model. It's got 12 wounds. It has a 5-up built-in ward. And it's got this little mini game where when you kill things, it powers up. And as it powers up, its ward improves to a 4-up ward. And then once you hit 6 points, you can spend all your points to deal 3d3 mortals on a 2-up to a nearby unit, which is quite the little bomb. You could kill smaller heroes with that. So pretty fighty, pretty cool. It still has a ton of mobility, being able to kind of teleport around the field. It looks like a really fun model and possibly quite strong. Despite its really high price, I do put the Black Coach up in the B tier just because it seems quite strong on the table and it's just an awesome sculpt. So speaking of awesome sculpts, or in this case, not so awesome sculpts, here's the Mourn Ghoul. I almost didn't include him in the list because he's a Forge World model. I don't think they even put his War Scroll in the new Battle Tome, but he is still a Nighthaunt unit. He is still playable. I give him a D minus for value. Now he's 67 bucks, which admittedly is cheaper than a lot of units that you run at 300 points, but it's more expensive than some of your big heroes like Lady Olinder, which is a much better purchase in my opinion. Aesthetics, I give him an F. You know, as I was saying, the spirit hosts don't quite live up to the aesthetic of the army. This is that times 10, and it just really doesn't fit, in my opinion. You know, this is an army of, you know, wretched ghosts like the damned, and this is just like a big legless doofus balancing on a dead cow. If you'll forgive me, I don't like him. Sorry if you do. And gameplay wise, he doesn't seem worth running, which is another reason I kind of take away from the value because I could see this just sitting on your shelf. It's 300 points. He gets 8 attacks, and this is it. There's no special extra attacks, and it brackets down to 5 at his lowest bracket. 3s to hit, 3s to wound, Ren -1, and damage 2, which is pretty underwhelming for spending 300 points on this. He heals a couple wounds if he kills someone. He does mortals on 6s, which is the one like kind of good thing on his war scroll that I can see. And he has a debuff to hit rolls for things attacking him. So I really looked at this. I was trying to think if I was missing something. Please let me know if I am, if you run the Mourn Ghoul, because I know Nighthaunt has a lot of little tricks up its sleeve. But if you really wanted a monster in your army, because this is a monster, you could ally in a Terrorgeist for 5 points more. And I don't think you would even want to do that. I think you would just want to run better Nighthaunt units. I don't think you necessarily need a monster. I think you'd be better off running Kurtas Valencian, who's almost 100 points cheaper. If you just want a beat stick who has a much better attack profile. Or you could even run a Lord Executioner, which is not a very strong hero in my opinion. And that's like almost 200 points cheaper and arguably has a comparable, if not better, attack profile. So I don't like the Mourn Ghoul. I don't think he's worth looking at. And you probably could guess from how I'm talking about him, but I put him down with those terrible old Nighthaunt dice in the F tier. Okay, moving on though, we got Thorns of the Briar Queen, another not so great purchase for the army. It's pretty expensive. It's like 60 bucks for a hero and 5 little chain rasp. Admittedly, they do look better than standard chain rasp. I do give it an A plus for aesthetics. I think this is a fantastic looking Underworld's warband. If that's what you're buying it for, then yeah, I would say go for it.
But if you're playing Age of Sigmar, it's a F gameplay-wise. It's 280 points, which is a lot for a wizard that doesn't really have very compelling reasons to take her and an army with stronger wizards. And then you get some slightly upgraded chain rasps with a bodyguard feature for your crappy wizard for 280 points. So right now, not very compelling. I put the Thorns of the Briar Queen, as cool as they look, down in the D tier. All right, Crawlock the Jailer, aka a Spirit Torment hero with a unit of 2 chain ghasts. He's decent value actually because you're getting kind of 2 for 1 in this box. You get the hero, which is in the front, and then you get this little unit of 2 chain ghasts, which are a little support unit in the back there. It's those 2 guys behind him, and they run separately. It's not like you have to have the 3 of them together on the board. So I give him a C plus for value because the box is $42. But some heroes are $42, but this guy you get this extra little unit with it. So not a huge value increase, but something to think about. Aesthetics, I give him an A. I think that the 3 models you get for this all look great. I like the kind of ball and chain vibe of these guys. And I give him a B for gameplay. It's a nice little utility hero and unit to have. The Spirit Torment has a healing ability, which is nice. It can also raise dead, of course. And the Chain Gas give an aura of +1 to hit as long as the Spirit Torment is alive. And they have nice little damage profiles on both with -2 rend, which is nice to see. So I put the Spirit Torment and his buddies in the B tier. Arock the Drowner is another great new sculpt recently released. He's 175 points, and he has this cool command ability to teleport all over the dang place. It can't be unbound because it's not a spell, which is pretty cool. And basically, he and some buddies, aka 1 unit within 18 inches, because he's a totem, so he can give commands 18 inches out, get to just teleport anywhere on the battlefield 9 inches away from enemy models. So great utility with this guy. Aesthetics, I give him an A. C for value, he's $50. Pretty standard high pricing. A for gameplay, just because of the potential utility and the mobility he can offer your army. Arock, I put him in the B tier. Okay, next is Ghost Mama herself, Lady Olinder. She is $50 or $42 at a discount, which for a big centerpiece like model, she's 340 points. I give her a B for value. That's a good chunk of the way along to making your 1,000 or 2,000 point list. And that's cheaper than you usually see for these kind of like big named leaders of factions. They're usually like 100, $130. So I give her a B for that reason, although, it is $50 that you're paying for 1 hero. She looks amazing. I think it's one of the best looking heroes you got for the Nighthaunt. It's a great centerpiece. I give her an S- for aesthetics. Gameplay wise, I give her an A+. She's cool. She's a 2-cast wizard. She's treated as a general, even if she's not your general for the army. She's got that War Master trait, which is nice. And she's got a 4-up ward, which is pretty solid. And being the Mortarch of Grief, she appropriately has lots of ways to grief your opponent. She can counter commands. She returns D6 models to each summonable Nighthaunt on the table each round. And she has a lot of neat little abilities, lots of potential utility with her, not to mention all the Nighthaunt spells you can be pumping out with her. Great centerpiece, great model to have around. For that, I'm going to go ahead and put Lady Olinder up in the A tier. Kurtas Valencian, I think, saw a little bit of increase in strength if a decrease in complexity from the last edition. He's B for value for the same reasons as Lady Olinder. He's kind of one of these centerpiece big bosses of the Nighthaunt, but he's only $50 or 42 at a discount. He's 210 points. Aesthetics, I give him a B+. I don't think he looks quite as cool as Olinder or some of the other heroes, but pretty neat. I like the little trumpeters that accompany him, and the flag is nice. He's pretty fighty is what they've done with him. He has 5 attacks at 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -3 rend, which is rare to see in Nighthaunt, and 3 damage each. And he has this ability that lets him steal command points from your opponent. I put Kurtas up in the B tier. Our next hero is the Lord Executioner. This is another case of a great sculpt, not so great on the table right now. I value him at a C. He's pretty expensive, especially compared to where he used to be, where he was kind of the unwanted stepchild and available for cheap on eBay of the Soul Wars units. Those days seem to be gone. He's 35 bucks retail. You can find him for about 25 bucks online. You used to be able to find him for like 9, kind of like the Merc Knob and Cruel Boys, but no longer, alas. Aesthetics wise, I give him an S or an A, depending on which one you're looking at. I could see people preferring either because they're both great sculpts. I like the one with the gallows hanging off. Granted, it's the one I happen to own. It is very delicate, though. It's very easy to break. The gallows broke off of mine when I was assembling it, and he's attached by like a very thin wisp, so be careful with him. Gameplay wise, I give him a C minus. He's not really a lot of reason to pick this up from a competitive perspective. He has 5 attacks, 3s, 3s, -2 rend, 2 damage each. Decent for Nighthaunt, but not really much utility elsewise. He does have a 5-up ward, so he's a little tankier than some other heroes. 140 points. But the Lord Executioner in the C tier, fairly average. Okay, the Cruelgas Cruciator is kind of an interesting hero. Great sculpt. Value in a C is 38 bucks. Again, fairly standard. Aesthetics, I give him an S. I think he's one of the best looking heroes you can get. And gameplay, I give him an A plus because he offers this 12-inch aura of damage reduction. Now it's conditional on being within 12 inches of a terrified unit, but you're going to be terrifying your enemies as Nighthaunt just by being close to them. So put this guy behind your melee battle line units, and he's going to be making those units quite a bit tougher than they otherwise would be. And he also has a pretty decent little 12-inch ranged attack, which you don't have very many ranged options in Nighthaunt. So he can kind of sit behind your battle line and take some pot shots as well. I put the Cruelgas Cruciator right up in the B tier. The Cairn Wraith is a nice little hero for the army. He's only $16.50 or 15 bucks at a discount, which is why I value him at an A. And his aesthetic really holds up. You can see they kind of built an entire army out of this guy, so you got to pay respects. I might even, I've been a little harsh on the guy, C plus B behind the range for aesthetics. He's cool, he's solid, and you can see he really inspired the rest of the line. This model, of course, being older, he is plastic, hailing from Fantasy Battle, now sporting a nice round base for Age of Sigmar. And in the game, he's decent. He's got this kind of neat way you can potentially pump out a lot of attacks against chaff units because he gets attacks equal to the number of enemies within 3 inches, and he's doing 3s and 3s, -1, 2 damage. So pretty cheap, 115 points. He's not gonna, be the strongest hero in the army by any means. But given he's so cheap, if you're really looking into kind of building the army up on a budget, I put him in the B tier. Similarly, the Tomb Banshee is another older sculpt. I value at an A, given the cheap pricing, like with the Cairn Wraith. Aesthetics, again, I give her like a C minus, but she holds up. She matches the style of the army, and she is a plastic sculpt. Gameplay-wise, though, she's kind of not as fun as I understand this model used to be since 7th edition of Fantasy Battle from what I've read. She used to have this cool ability where she could scream at the enemy, and it was based on bravery they would take mortal wounds, but that's gone. Right now she just has kind of a basic standard 3s 3s rend -2 1 damage. Ranged attack, which is pretty decent, and then she's got this ability to pick an enemy and add 1 if it's terrified, which it will be if she's close by.
And then on a 4+, your opponent has to add 1 to the number of command points to issue a command to that enemy, which I don't know. It seems like they probably just wouldn't issue commands to that enemy if you did that, but it could potentially make a difference in some situations.
I do put the Tomb Banshee lower than the Cairn Wraith down in the C tier. Okay, next is the Knight of Shrouds on Foot. This is the hero that you get in the Vanguard set. I do value him at a D because you can get him at a discount in the Vanguard set, but otherwise pretty standard Games Workshop pricing on this guy. Aesthetic, I give him a B+. He's pretty cool. He's got a neat little helmet, but not as standout as some of the other heroes available. In gameplay, I also give him a B+. He's got a pretty solid attacks profile. He's got 5 wounds, 5 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -1 rend, and 2 damage each. And he's got this neat thing, the Sword of Stolen Hours. He can heal a wound if he kills anything that turn, and he adds 1 to his total wounds profile, which is pretty cool. So even if you're not wounded, you're still benefiting from this, and there's no cap. He can also issue Redeploy or Unleash Hell without spending a command point once per battle round, which is good. You're probably going to mostly use it on the Redeploy since there's not too many units in Nighthaunt that can Unleash Hell, other than like the crossbow guys who aren't that good, and maybe your Cruciator or your Black Coach. And then he can pick one unit wholly within 12 of him, and they fight one after the other. Either he goes first or they can go first. So that's a nice little buff in the combat phase. I put the individual purchase Knight of Shrouds on Foot in the C tier. Alright, the Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed. He is another unit that I value at a D, but for different reasons. It's because you either can get him through the $80 bundle of those 3 heroes, the Ethereal Court I mentioned earlier, or you're kind of left to the whims of whatever people are charging on eBay, which it currently seems to be about $40, but he's kind of hard to find and you might be stuck paying more. Aesthetics, I give him an A+. I think the Knight of Shrouds looks way cooler on the horse than on the ground. A lot more imposing looking model. Gameplay wise, I give him a B+. Overall, he's quite similar to the Knight of Shrouds on Foot. He's 20 points more. He's a little more mobile. He's got 1 more wound at 6 wounds. Otherwise, attack profile is the same. He gets some crappy attacks from the horse. And then he's got the same abilities, with the exception that the command ability he can issue is all-out attack, which seems a little more versatile than the Redeploy Unleash Hell. I put him in the C tier too, but just above his cousin on foot. Next is Reikinor the Grimhailer. He's another Nighthaunt hero unit, and he's another one of these easy to build sets, but unfortunately doesn't get the same discount treatment as the other ones. I think because he's a rather intricate model. They charge $42 for him, or $35 if you can find him cheaper. I value him in a C for that reason. Aesthetics, I don't actually love him. I think from a distance he looks a lot more like something that belongs in Soulblight Gravelords than Nighthaunt. That's just me though. It is an intricate model. It's just not my personal cup of tea. For gameplay, he's 190 points. He's a very fighty wizard. He has a pretty strong attacks profile and 7 wounds, 14-inch movement. And he has this cool ability where he has these corpse candles and he can snuff them out, dealing a mortal to either an enemy or a mortal wound to himself. And depending on if he does an enemy or himself, he gets +1 or +3 to casting respectively. He also has an ability that lets him bully his priest and wizard. He gets +1 to hit and wounds with his Reaper Scythe. So overall, decent hero, strong little wizard, and quite fighty. I put Reikinor right there in the C tier. So the last of our easy to build set is the Dreadblade Harrows, which do get a nice little discount. It's $27 for 2 of them, or you can find them at a discount for about $23. And the interesting thing is this looks like it would be like a cavalry unit, but it's actually 2 heroes. So this is kind of interesting. You don't see this a lot where you get 2 identical heroes in a box for a cheaper price than 1 hero, but that's the case here. So I give them an A+ for value for that alone. Aesthetics wise, I give them a B. I think they're pretty solid looking Nighthaunt on horses, although they do kind of look like they should be a
Troops choice rather than a hero, but maybe that's just me. Gameplay wise, I actually give them an A plus, especially considering you can pick them up pretty cheap. They have 4 attacks each at threes, threes, -1, 2, pretty standard for Nighthaunt heroes. But they have this very mobile ability where at the end of the movement phase, you can remove them and reset them 9 inches from enemy every movement phase. And then they can also issue the same command as your general without spending a command point. So they seem to me like a very mobile utility hero for the army, and something that could be quite annoying for popping around the board and teleporting all over, landing on objectives. I can see you getting a lot of use out of these. Because of that, I put them in the A tier, combined with their great value. Guardian of Souls is our next hero, who's a great hero that's hard to get a hold of, which is why I value him at a D. You can't buy him individually. If you want to get him new from GW, you got to buy him in that bundle of 3. That's 80 bucks. Otherwise, you're stuck looking for him on eBay, and the cheapest I've seen him is $40, if not more, because he's quite a popular hero for the army. He, aesthetic-wise, though, is fantastic looking. I think he's one of your best-looking foot heroes for the whole army. I give him an S for aesthetics. I love the lantern. I love his mask, and the whole vibe is just kind of spooky. Gameplay-wise, I give him an S. He's one-cast wizard. He's got some pretty cool buffs for your units. He gives a +1 to wound for friendly Nighthaunt within 12 inches, which benefits to wound are generally stronger than benefits to hit because they're less common. There's no command ability for it. And he heals D6 wounds and or returns slain models to summonable units, which is awesome. So slot this guy in behind your battle line, and if your opponent can't wipe your units off the board between him and some of your other healing units like the Spirit Torment, Lady Olinder, it's going to be very hard to get some of your battle line off of the field. Great hero overall. Only thing holding him back for me is that he's hard to get a hold of and he's kind of pricey, which is why I put him in the C tier. But gameplay wise, he's up there. The Scriptor Mortis is another new sculpt for the army, and it's a fantastic looking one at that. I value him at a C. He's 38 bucks, same as the Cruciator, 32 at a discount. Aesthetics, though, I give him an S. He's one of the best looking heroes, and I like that with him and Arock, they're taking the heroes in a little more creative direction. I love his quill, I love his lantern, I love his book. He's creepy, he's different, he's unique. He's everything you want in a model except the War Scroll. The War Scroll's bad. His flavor is cool. He writes down in his book that he's like judging one of the heroes on the enemy side, and then you get to make this judgment roll the next battle round. So you don't get to make it the turn you pick. So on turn 1, you pick a hero visible to you, and then you make a note of him, and then on your next turn, you get to make a judgment roll, and each turn after that. And then basically if you roll under the current battle round, then the judged enemy gets 2d6 mortals. And 2d6 mortals is all well and good if it would ever happen, but I don't see this ever going off, or very rarely. It's flavorful, it's kind of fun, but it's not good. So as much as I love the Scriptor Mortis and it would be cool to have as a model to paint, I put him in the D tier just because of how bad his War Scroll is. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for, it's Big Papa Nagash himself, clocking in at 950 points for 130 US. He's a heavyweight of the Death Armies. He doesn't actually have the Nighthaunt keyword, but he's their dad in the lore. He made him. And of course, he's a War Master for any Death Army. Now, the value I had a little trouble coming up with, but I ultimately put him at a D. Here's why. 130 bucks is a lot, so is 110. You are getting 955 points for 110 bucks, which is a lot of points, but he's just not really strong enough to warrant it. And I think if you're playing at any sort of non-casual level with the game, which there is something to be said. He is a lot of fun, very Timmy model, but he's just gonna probably wind up on the shelf. But he is a way to get your army from 1,000 points to 2,000 points very, very quickly and relatively cheap. So we'll come back to aesthetics in a minute, but what does he do on the table? Gameplay wise, he's 955 points, which is a ton. He has a decent ranged attack. He has some decent melee attacks, but the main things are his ability and his spells. He got the 9 books of Nagash. He's 3 cast wizard at baseline. He gets 5 extra on top of that when he's at full health. And he can cast Arcane Bolt as much as he wants. So you can always use those extra spells just to hold a bunch of Arcane Bolts and crap mortals on the people. The other thing he does is you can pick up to 5 different summonable units and heal up to 3 wounds or return models to them. This, is more consistent as it's not role-based, but it strikes me as just perhaps weaker than Lady Olinder's, which just does it for everything that's Nighthaunt. He has a 4-up ward, but the big caveat on this is it's only against mortal wounds. So if you're up against an army that deals regular wounds, like say a bunch of Iron Jaws pop into Nagash, you're probably not going to have a good time. So really important to protect him, and you've only got 1,000 points left to do it. He can also reroll dice or add 1 to the number of slain models returned to units when you use this ability. Any ability that returns slain models, which makes his invocation of Nagash better than it looks at first glance. He does have this awesome command ability that gives +1 to wards. He's got this cool spell. It's a 3-inch 50-50 chance to auto kill an enemy hero. So there are some shenanigans. You can put the mirror endless spell up to do that to guys against across the board if you want it. But it's just a lot of investment, and if he dies, you basically lose the game. So those are my thoughts on Nagash. Now, as far as his aesthetics, I give him a B-. I think he's kind of big and goofy looking, to be honest. I think Lady Olinder looks a lot cooler. He's obviously bigger and more imposing. Not bad looking, just the big hat, the ancient Egyptian theme isn't really doing it for me. No disrespect to the big man. Now, if we're talking about the OG Nagash, now this is obviously an S tier value, S++ on the aesthetics and S on the gameplay. And mad respect to anybody who's able to come up with a diorama on the base and make him tall enough to run this instead of the poor man's new Nagash. Anyway, enough time talking about the big guy. I actually put him in the D tier, not to disrespect the man, but I just don't think it's the best early purchase for somebody collecting Nighthaunt. But certainly go for it if you want him. Okay, that does it for all the mainline units for Nighthaunt. The last couple left here are just some limited edition sculpts. The first being Darakar, which is an alternate sculpt of the Guardian of Souls. These were released in 2019 as a commemorative edition, limited run series, only sold at events. As such, it's very hard to find him. He's very hard to find on eBay. When he is up there, I'd expect to pay at least $75 for him, which is why I value him at an F. For one hero, that's quite steep. Aesthetics-wise, I give him an A. It's a solid sculpt. Personally, I prefer the regular Guardian of Souls, which is kind of a shame, especially, if you're going to be going out of your way to collect this guy. Gameplay-wise, though, he's an A, the same as the regular Guardian of Souls. He's quite a strong unit. Just, I don't see, for me, a strong reason to purchase this over the regular one. So sadly, Darakar, I'm putting you in the D tier. If you can find him cheap, by all means go for it, or if you just want to complete the list, but very expensive. And then the last one, even more so, is Garcore, which is a Blade Geist Revenant. Emphasis on the A Blade Geist Revenant. It's just one model for the unit. You can run it as the unit champion, but yeah, F, paying $75 for 1/10 of a unit is really not good value. Aesthetics, though, it's an S. I can see why you might want to buy it anyway, because it's a great looking model. The gameplay, again, F, it's 1/10 of a unit of Blade Geist Revenants. I wouldn't go out of your way to get this unless you're just dying to have it, which is why I put her down in the F tier, sadly, with the Mourn Ghoul. So anyway, this just about does it for the list. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are. If you'd rank anything differently, please let me know. And as always, thank you so much for watching. This was quite the marathon video, so thanks if you made it with me here to the end. And if you liked the video, feel free to give us a like or a comment or that kind of stuff. You know, helps out with the channel, and I always like to see that people are watching. So anyway, thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day. Take it easy. See ya.